What would you do if you heard your own voice on the radio, predicting tragedies that hadn't happened yet? How far would you go to change a future that was never meant to be yours? Tonight's story is about a man who discovered a broadcast from another timeline and the terrible price of knowing your own future. In the Dust Bowl days of 1938, when the radio was a window to distant worlds, one farmer stumbled upon a frequency that shouldn't exist, a station broadcasting news that hadn't happened, a voice eerily familiar. What began as curiosity soon became obsession. With each prediction that came true, the broadcasts grew more desperate, more fractured, as if something was unraveling with every changed outcome. I must warn you, once you hear a prediction, you may never escape it. And tampering with time, well, something always breaks. Spring, 1938. The Great Depression had hollowed out the small farming town of Millfield, Illinois. For Thomas Caldwell, the only escape from endless dust and despair was through the crackling voices on his radio. Every evening after tending his struggling farm, he'd search the airwaves for distant voices, music from Chicago, news from New York, anything to remind him the world hadn't ended at Millfield's borders.
And that concludes our weather report. Clear skies ahead for most of the Midwest, except for an unexpected electrical storm moving toward Millfield tomorrow evening. This is WLTR, your voice of tomorrow, broadcasting on 89.7. 89.7? That's impossible.
The AM radio band only went up to 1.6 megahertz, and 89.7 frequency would be FM. Technology still experimental in 1938, not yet available to the public. Thomas noted the strange weather prediction out of curiosity. He'd never heard of station WLTR, and their signal was remarkably clear for a distant broadcast. Later that evening, Thomas was startled by a loud crack of thunder. He didn't know why, but he felt compelled to walk over to the radio and switch it on.
Good evening, Millfield. This is WLTR, your voice of tomorrow. In local news, the Henderson farm lost 2 cows to lightning strikes in tonight's unexpected storm. And a special note, Thomas Caldwell might want to check his Eastfield fence before morning. What the hell?
The announcer calling him out personally got Thomas's attention. Where the hell did this station come from? He threw on a jacket and ran to the Eastfield fence. Sure enough, his beloved cattle were all pouring through a large gap. The predictions continued, each one more specific than the last. The radio knew when his neighbor would fall ill, when the general store would receive a rare shipment of coffee, and when the first frost would kill his tomato plants. Now, he was obsessed. Every day without fail, Thomas would tune in to get his daily fix of eerily accurate predictions.
This is WLTR, your voice of tomorrow, broadcasting on 89.7. And Thomas should be careful driving to town tomorrow. The Miller boy will be racing his father's car on County Line Road around noon.
And sure enough, as Thomas was in his truck at noon on County Line Road, Johnny Miller cut him off so hard it made him swerve into a ditch, just as the radio presenter had predicted.
Johnny Miller, you little idiot! Watch where you're going, will ya?
Thomas began to organize his life around the broadcasts, as each day, the mysterious station would appear on his dial with uncanny predictions.
And now, for some difficult news. We regret to inform our listeners that Thomas Caldwell's sister in Chicago will receive a diagnosis of pneumonia on Friday. Chances of recovery are uncertain.
Thomas ran to the phone and dialed his sister, Margaret.
Hello?
Margaret, listen to me. You need to see a doctor. Today.
I have an appointment for Friday, Thomas.
Not Friday, today. Please trust me on this.
Apologies for the interruption. If this tale has you on the edge of your seat, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave me a comment. Now, where were we? That night, Thomas felt a huge sense of relief when Margaret called him to tell him that the doctor had treated her and that she was going to be okay. His sister survived thanks to early treatment. Thomas had changed the future, but that night, the broadcast took a different tone.
This is WLTR. Thomas, are you listening? Things are changing. The timeline is shifting. I don't understand what's happening. Margaret was supposed to... Wait, I need to think.
What did the presenter mean? What was supposed to happen to Margaret? Thomas needed answers. Determined to find them, Thomas went to the barn and dug out his old radio transmitter in the hopes of communicating with the mysterious broadcaster. He turned it on before proceeding to scour every frequency he could in an attempt to make contact. 3 hours later, just as he was about to give up, he heard it.
Hello? This is Thomas Caldwell. Who are you? How do you know these things about me? God damn it, you're transmitting? That wasn't supposed to happen. Thomas, you don't understand what you're doing.
Who are you? Tell me!
You know who I am, Thomas. Listen to my voice. Really listen.
It can't be. You sound like...
Like you? That's because I am you, Thomas. Or rather, what you become in the future where you leave Millfield. Once you finally pursue that interest you have in radio broadcasting instead of clinging to a failing farm.
The voice from the radio was his own. Older, refined by years of professional broadcasting, but unmistakably his.
In my timeline, I left Millfield in 1939. The farm failed anyway. I went to Chicago, found work at a radio station, eventually became the host of a popular program. But scientists discovered something, a frequency that could penetrate time itself. They built a special transmitter at our station. We were supposed to only observe the past, never interact. But when I recognized my own life, I couldn't help myself. I wanted to spare you the hardships I endured. But Thomas, each time you change something based on my warnings, my reality shifts. People who I know are passing on. Events are changing. Margaret was supposed to pass from that pneumonia. In my timeline, her passing was what led me to leave Millfield. My world is unraveling, Thomas. Every change you make erases a piece of my existence.
You need to listen carefully. Our communications have created a paradox. If you continue changing your future based on my warnings, my timeline will completely collapse. I'm already...
Parts of Chicago don't exist anymore. Colleagues vanishing mid-sentence. My wife, a woman you'll never meet now, half her memories are gone.
You have a choice to make. Either you follow the path that leads to me, or you forge a new future. One where I cease to exist. I can't...
The transmitter surged and sparked before the transmission finally came to an end.
Wait, don't go! Tell me what to do!
The broadcasts never returned. Thomas was left alone with the knowledge of a future that might never come to pass, and the final cryptic words of his other self. Months later, as his farm faced foreclosure, Thomas packed his few belongings. Among them, his notebook of predictions. Some say that late at night on old radios tuned to impossible frequencies, you can still hear fragments of broadcasts that haven't happened yet. But remember, once you've glimpsed your future, you've already changed it forever. Let's see if you're as lucky with one of our other odd and mysterious tales. See you next time.